What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of First Date Unsolved. It is officially spooky season, and I am officially excited. Fall candles are lit, Halloween decorations are up. It is my favorite time of year. We are ready to go, ready to enjoy all the things that are autumn: pumpkins, apple cider, crisp leaves, scaring children on Halloween night, all the things we love the most around here. We are back today with another Spookysode, Spookysode 2. The first spooky episode, we talked about Lum's Pond and the legend of Catman last October in 2023. This year, we have yet another local haunting because we like to keep things local here. And we're going to be talking about Maggie's Bridge. Maggie's Bridge is a teeny tiny little bridge in Seaford, Delaware. It's not much to look at if you didn't know about the legend. I believe, maybe when this story took place in the 1800s, the bridge was wooden and a lot more rustic than it is now. But these days, it's just a slab of pavement, blacktop, with some guardrails up. So again, you wouldn't think much of it unless you knew what it was. We're going to be getting into that because we spoke with a local Delaware author who actually wrote a book about Maggie's Bridge. She's even written a series of books about all local Delaware hauntings and spooky things like that. Her name is Kelly Lidji. Lidji, I think is how you say it. Lidji. I'm sorry, Kelly. I don't mean to butcher that, but you're probably used to it at this point. But yeah, we're going to talk to Kelly in a little bit. We're going to hear from her about her book. We're going to hear from her about her personal experiences with the haunting of Maggie's Bridge, and get into a little bit of other exciting news towards the end of the episode. So Maggie's Bridge, just like with most legends, there's a few different versions of what took place, right? All of the versions of Maggie's Bridge include a pregnant Maggie traveling with a horse. Some she has a carriage, some it's just her and her horse. They are riding late at night in the dark, and for one reason or another, the horse gets spooked and Maggie is thrown, ultimately being decapitated. Obviously, no one can say for sure why Maggie haunts the bridge. Some speculate she's looking for her head. Others speculate that she's looking for her baby, the baby that was lost during the accident. But, who's to say? And just like there are different versions of the legend, there are also said to be various methods of conjuring the spirit. Some include placing your hands on the railing of the bridge and chanting, "Maggie, Maggie, I have your baby." Another way to call the phantom is by saying her name 3 times in a row, like Bloody Mary. You say Maggie, Maggie, Maggie. Some individuals just go to the bridge and don't say anything, and they still get a reaction. I read up on, the hauntings of the bridge and people's experiences online, and the experiences I've read about, the most interesting, I would say, that I've read about were the sound of horse hooves on the pavement, on the blacktop, without any horses being present. Individuals saying that a shadow emerges from the woods on either side of the bridge, a shadowy figure, which is creepy. And others, as dramatic as this sounds, others have said that they've seen Maggie herself walk out of the woods with her head in her hand, asking you to reattach her head and bring her back to life. I myself, if I were to ever see something like that, would have an accident and possibly would pass out. So I hope I don't ever see anything like that. And apparently all this works best between the hours of midnight and 1 a.m. And it's best if it's on the night of a full moon, even better if it's a blue moon. Several paranormal investigators on YouTube have even visited the bridge. 2 guys have been back more than once. I believe it was the video I watched by the gentleman CJ Faison. They've been there at least twice. And they also mentioned the notorious Patty Cannon in the second video. According to one of the investigators, the Cannon's family or gang ran the ferry that travels along the Nanacoke River, which is like a stone's throw from the bridge. These guys had theories on top of theories, and one is that Patty and her crew had something to do with Maggie's death, but that theory seems really far-fetched, in my opinion, because Patty died in 1829, and Maggie is said to have died in the late 1800s, but anything is possible, you know? Some visitors have said that Patty's name comes through on devices like a spirit box or EMF, EVP. I never know the difference, but Patty's name has been heard or mentioned. And so I guess it's possible her spirit hangs around there, or the spirits that hang around there know about Patty. I don't know how spirits work. I'm sorry. And an apparition of Jacob Cannon, Patty's cousin, who they assume is Jacob, has been seen wandering around the area where he was shot, right by the Woodland Ferry area. Again, the ferry. So who knows, guys? There's just a lot going on down there in Seaford, apparently. So, as I mentioned, the author Kelly Lidgy and I spoke about her books, Maggie, I Have Your Baby, her series that she has out. We spoke about the legend of Maggie's Bridge, her personal experiences. We talked about a lot, actually. We talked about our kids. We talked about Halloween. We talked about her pet birds. We talked about a lot. I won't share all of that with you because that's just not why you're here. But let's get into what she had to say specifically about Maggie's Bridge and her books. Is it like a series, or are they like...
Yes,
okay,
it is a series, but they are standalone. I mean, the protagonist, Claire, and her family go all the way through.
Okay.
But she kind of encounters different ghosts in different places. But say if you live in Georgetown, Delaware, and you are only interested in the latest one, Till Death Do Us Part, which is about the ghost at Cokesbury Church outside Georgetown, you could read just that book and it would be perfectly fine. It would make complete sense. You don't have to read them all, but you can if you want.
Okay, that's really cool because, a lot of times in a series, you have to read the first one in order to know what's going on. So that's really neat that you can pick them up as standalone as well if you wanted to.
You can. I have sometimes people will pick one and then they go back and, read the ones that they missed. It's like, oh, okay. Now I see where they came from. Like, yeah.
It makes sense now.
Because Claire started out as a teenager in Maggie, and now she is in her 30s. So
okay.
We have moved along a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
I won't make you go through all the titles if you don't want. I can look those up. I mean, I have them written down.
I certainly can if you like, and tell you what legend they're based on and what they're about.
Yes, please.
Maggie, I Have Your Baby is about the legend of Maggie's Bridge, which is in Woodland, Delaware, which is kind of in between Seaford and Laurel.
Okay.
And that's the first one. The second one is the screaming, That Devil Knows My Name, the Screaming Woman of Lum's Pond. And that is about the ghost at Lum's Pond State Park. The third one is Where the Eidolons Sleep. And it's sort of kind of a sequel to Maggie, as in some of the characters in the past in Maggie reappear in the Eidolon book. It takes place in Woodland, and back in 1903, there was a smallpox outbreak, and the towns of Seaford and Laurel, and this is all documented. You can read about it. They blocked off the entrances and exits to the town and wouldn't let anybody in or out. So about 30 people died, and only about half of them from smallpox. The other half died from starvation and lack of care because they couldn't get supplies. And they buried the deceased in a mass grave that no one can find. It's kind of lost. So that book is sort of the ghosts of that epidemic and finding where they're buried. Let's see. The Early Fox Gets the Bird takes place in Millsboro, Delaware, and that is about the witch Molly Keyhonk, who is said to still haunt the woods of Millsboro and steals children. And then the fifth in the series is Till Death Do Us Part, and that is, as I said, based in Georgetown, Delaware, and it is about the ghost of the bride that walks up and down the highway in front of Cokesbury Church. And
Okay.
poor Claire, she keeps running into him everywhere. It's I feel bad for her.
She must be a magnet for that kind of thing.
Well, she kind of is. I don't want to spoil anything.
Mhm.
So, like once you get further into it, you'll see why she's a magnet for them.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the Lumps Pond one, is that
Mhm.
about the young girl who was supposedly, raped and murdered in Lumps Pond?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. She was never identified. So this book is figuring out who she was and what
Okay.
happened to her.
Cool. Yeah, I talked about that one last October as well. Have you ever heard of the legend of Catman?
I have, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was new to
Haven't
me as
gotten into
well.
that one yet. I have a lot of stories that I wanna get to,
Oh,
but
okay. So you're gonna plan on writing more books?
Oh, absolutely. The next one that I'm gonna start after the summer season is over because I work in Rehoboth Beach,
Okay.
and we are,
Busy.
it gets busy in the summer, but I want to do one about the 14-foot bank lighthouse, which is about 12 miles out into the Delaware Bay. A gentleman went crazy out there, and we're going to find out why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, his ghost is still out there screaming. So we're going to figure that out.
How much of Maggie's story was based on fact? Like, I don't know what your sources were and how much you were able to find out, but I was really
I
curious to hear about
know,
that.
I know that Maggie Bloxham was a real human being.
Mhm.
I know that when she was young, she attempted to run away from home because she was unmarried and pregnant.
Okay.
I read from a lot of different sources that her horse got spooked
Mhm.
and she went off the bridge and she was decapitated. And since then, people have been hearing her and seeing her and having all sorts of things happen to them out at the bridge. And I wanted to know, I wanted the questions answered that weren't answered. Like, why was she running away? I mean, how bad were her parents? I mean, I guess at the time you really couldn't be that age and
Yeah,
unmarried and pregnant. In the
right.
1800s, that was just the worst possible thing to have happen. But who was the father of her baby? Where were they going? I wanted to answer those questions because this was a story that I've known since I was young. I grew up in Laurel when I was a
Mhm.
child, and then I moved to Seaford, and that's where I went to middle and high school. So Claire's story is very, very similar to my own. I mean, that's what I did in high school. I went out to Maggie's Bridge with my friends. So there was a lot of reality in that part. Maggie's that ghost story is my story. And the
Okay.
Cokesbury Church story, the most recent one I did, that one
Mhm.
is also kind of my story because I used to have to drive past that church and I was utterly terrified that I was going to see that woman walking up and down the highway.
Yeah, listening to the book, I really loved hearing the little hints of Delaware, like, being at the beach and the part with Claire and her friend and his boyfriend are having Grotto's pizza and the smell of the salt air and Funland. I just because I'm familiar with all of those places, it's not really personal to me, but it felt really cool. Like, oh, I know where that is. I've been there. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and
S-
writing it, I felt myself back there. To be fair, I'm literally there every day now,
yeah,
but it's not quite the same as it was when you're a teenager and it's all fun and
right,
amazing. Yeah,
and free, and
pretty much. Yeah.
but I think hopefully, a lot of people who are outside of Delaware will get to read the book and I think it's cool for them to kind of know a little bit about our state because not a lot of people know much about us. So
Yeah,
I
and
really like that.
Delaware has an enormous amount of ghost stories. I mean, we're the first state. We've been here a really long time,
Long time, yeah.
and there are so very many ghost stories that are not well known at all, that just, are just a blurb in like a ghost story collection written by somebody else. Just like, oh, go here, you see this, but there's really no other information that goes along with it. And that made me sad that, they kind of disappeared. My
Maggie, yeah.
grandmother's name was Maggie, so I feel very close to the book. Um, but the reasoning behind them is it was literally at the beginning of the pandemic when I had the idea, and
Okay.
I was thinking, what can I do? I've got to leave the house. I can't. I've been in the house for so long, it's driving me crazy.
Hmm.
And I thought I could go out to the bridge, but I can't take anybody with me. And then I started to think about Maggie herself, and the fact that people have been going out to her bridge for years and basically taunting her, because
Yeah.
it's kind of mean. I had a young girl last year. I did a an event at a school, and she's like, it's not nice what they do. People go out there and tease her. And I was like, you know what? You're right. It's not. It's absolutely not. But I wanted to know, and I wanted to give her a story so that she wouldn't disappear. And it's the same for all of them. I don't necessarily want to write a book about a ghost story that everybody's heard of. I want to find the rare ones, or the ones that nobody talks about, or the ones that there's not a ton of information about, and kind of bring that out so that people know that it was, they were real people. I think
I like that because that's a lot of why I started the podcast because you try to look up a person, like if you just pick any random cold case or missing person from Delaware, you're not going to get a lot of information. You'll get, a date, statistics, things like that. But it's like this was actually a person. They had a family. They had a life. They meant something to people, and I just hate that they're just a number or like a case number or just like I said a statistic. So I try to tell stories from like a personal perspective, and you did
yeah.
a really good job with that for Maggie.
Thank you.
The part
And
where
oh, go ahead.
the part where she's like just slowly fading and fading, like, well, I'm numb now, like I don't really feel anything, but it's just still raining and I see lights and I hear people, but like why aren't they looking for me? Like you really
Mm,
feel like how sad it had to be for her. So yeah, you did a really good job of that.
thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, if you go out there, you'll feel it. You wouldn't want to be stuck in that place for
Oh God, no. Like just
literally
it's
hundreds of years.
yeah, it's dark all the time and it's just why is it still raining? Like it has to stop at some point. And then she's trying to save her horse. It's like, oh, you poor thing.
Oh, I did that horse dirty. I really
A little bit, a little bit.
Oh, I felt so bad. And
But yeah, you really
it's almost
feel.
worse when you get to the 3rd book
Oh
and
no.
everybody's dying of the plague. Oh my god.
Oh no.
I felt terrible. Yeah, although I will say it is really fun. I never even considered writing ever in my
Mhm.
life until a few years ago. And I just one day said, "I'm going to try. See what happens." And that's where Maggie came from.
You mentioned you going to the bridge as a teenager. What kind of
Mhm.
experiences did you have,
I well, I let
if
me
any?
preface this by saying that I am the biggest horror fan known to man. My house is decorated for Halloween pretty much year round.
Okay.
I To find a horror novel or a horror movie that actually scares me is really, really hard.
Difficult, yeah.
I'm old and hardened, I guess. But that is in theory. If you said to me, let's go, this place is supposed to be haunted, let's go there at night, I would be like, Yeah, maybe not. But back in the 80s, um, there was really nothing to do in
Yeah.
Lower Delaware, especially if you were not allowed to go to the beach, which I was not.
Okay.
So, your friends would sit around, and it was also a good place to, like, if you were a guy, to, like, a girl that you wanted to get closer to. Oh, come on, let's go out to the bridge
Yeah.
because, scary,
Scare.
scary
Yep.
things make girls want to get close to guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I had several experiences where my friends and I would be bored and they're like, "Oh, come on, it's late. There's nothing to do. Let's go out to Maggie's Bridge. We can do it." And we'd pile in the car and we'd drive out there. And I know in the story, there's a bit of trepidation before they take their places, but in my real life, it took a lot more convincing than that for me to get out of the car. Eventually we did, and we have seen lights. Now they were not lightning bugs, they were not fireflies. It's pretty swampy around there, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
not exactly sure what we were seeing. It
Right.
very well could have been her herself. We had static interference with our radio. We
Ooh.
had, and when you go out there at midnight, things are very, very quiet. You would expect to hear frogs, you would expect to hear crickets, you would expect to hear like nighttime wood sounds.
Mm-hmm.
But in the times I went, it's always silent, so silent. And if you've ever been down there, the road, it's very, very close to the Nanticoke River. I
Yes.
mean, just a couple hundred yards through the woods and you are in the river. But the way that the road is laid out, there is a curve before you get to the bridge and there is a curve after. So when
Okay.
you are on the bridge, especially if it's dark, there is no sign of life anywhere around you. You cannot see any street lights, you cannot see any houses, anything. It's just you and your vehicle and the night. And it's super creepy. It's beautiful in the daytime, but it is a very scary place at night. So we would go out there, and it usually ended up with one or the other of us getting spooked by something and screaming, making everyone else scream and
And running.
racing away. There are a lot of like, or at least there were in my day, a lot of like tire burn marks on the road from
Oh,
people
okay.
just kind of racing away at night.
Peeling out. Yeah.
Yeah, they go along with the graffiti that's out there, which is
Yeah.
pretty much
I
the
read
only
about
way to
that.
tell that you're there.
And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? We did organize an event and we went down there on Monday, August 19th to the Maggie's Bridge in Seaford, and it was a good time. It was very, very interesting. Kelly took it upon herself. She set up an event on Facebook and she invited a few people, including me, who she knew had been interested in visiting the bridge in the past. The plan was to meet up at the McDonald's in Seaford, right on the main road there. I don't know if that's 13. It's not Route 1, but I believe it's 13. I was just there. I should remember, but I don't. But we were supposed to meet at the McDonald's between 11 and 11:30, and we would carpool to the bridge. Kelly mentioned that there's like a turn as you approach the bridge, so we didn't think it was the best idea to have a ton of cars lined up around a curve, in the middle of the night. We were just trying to be safe. There isn't a ton of room out there for cars to park anyway, so just trying to be smart about it. Well, Mr. First Aid and I arrived at the McDonald's right at 11:30, I believe, and no one was there. We weren't sure if they had already left or if they decided not to show up because it was like storming a little bit that night. There was some thunder and lightning at periods of time, and there was rain. So we weren't sure what what had happened. We waited a little bit and decided, we've driven all the way down here. We're not going to miss this. So we headed over to the bridge ourselves, and sure enough, everybody was already there waiting, and we arrived right at 11:59. So just in time for the party to start. There were several people there. I think Kelly said that about 20 people showed up, which is awesome. And all of us had our own little ghost hunting equipment. Me and, some others had apps, just like simple little free apps on our phone. But others had like legit equipment. I guess they do this kind of thing for fun, maybe for profit. I don't know. But one gentleman had his video camera with him with like night vision and all this other stuff. His wife mentioned he had a legit like EVP reader. Again, I'm sorry, I think that's the right term. There was another couple. I don't think they were with us. I think they were just there because it was a full moon. Another couple was there. They had these little red boxes, and each box had like a green light and a red light, as well as an antenna on them. And the thing is, like, if a ghost touches it, it lights up, right? So they had that. There were little balls, like, I don't know if they were like bouncy ball type things, but they lit up. These little balls lit up so that if a ghost touched them, they would flash, right? I ended up kicking them like twice just because it was dark and I couldn't see them. But, so we were all prepared. We were all ready and willing to go. And a little after midnight, in unison, we all chanted, "Maggie, I have your baby." The moon was bright and brilliant. There was a thin layer of fog covering the road, which added that, extra spooky factor. And the best part of all, surprisingly, there were no mosquitoes. Over the next hour, different things happened. Nothing too incredible, nothing like extreme. I was a little disappointed with my app in the beginning. I thought it was like complete garbage because it was at first it was saying things like yellow. I think the first word that appeared was yellow, and then it said Muslim out of the blue. So I don't know why it said that. A couple times it said the name Chris and Nicholas. I do remember that. At one point, my husband said, "Who's that?" appeared, and towards the very end of the night, right before we were leaving, something came up and it said, "Don't forget me," which I think, is really cool. I don't know how these apps work. I didn't take the time to research it. Sorry. But it was cool. Other people had their apps and they shared screenshots. Some of the things that appeared on their apps were, listen, please come back. I'm not sure. Dark, damaged. The word pathetic popped up on someone's app. What year is it? Cursed. Please go. How did you get here? It's not for you. What should I do? He won't leave. I can hear you. You shouldn't be here. That's kind of creepy, right? What's your name? I hear you. So all kinds of different things happened. Again, I'm not entirely sure how these apps work, but I do know there were 2 instances where the bar graph on our app like went insane. It went from short, small green bars to really tall, like flashing red bars. That was interesting. And around one of the times when that happened, the little red boxes that I mentioned with the lights lit up. That was pretty cool. The gentleman who owned the boxes, he would come over and he would check to make sure like there was no bug sitting on it or anything like that. So we weren't quite sure the reasoning that the boxes went off. I'm sorry, I said the boxes went off because I believe they went off at least twice. And at one point, Mr. First State Unsolved said he asked whatever was around us to touch the box and it lit up. So yeah, just, little things here and there that took place. There was a lot of people. There was a lot going on. I could have been distracted. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, nothing crazy happened. We didn't see Maggie pop out of the trees holding her head. I didn't really hear anything. Oh, lies. I do remember someone saying before we got there, they heard like knocking in the woods. Ha, so I lied. I'm sorry. But, like little things. Didn't really, again, no Maggie holding her head, no cries, no wailing, no Patty Cannon's cousin creeping around. But it was interesting. It was fun. Definitely more active and more exciting than the Catman adventure my nephew and I took. So, yes, if you are ever interested in visiting Maggie's Bridge yourself, I think it's worth your while. I think it's, a fun experience to have. Take your friends down, go. It's very, very quiet, very, very dark. Yeah, it's cool. It's fun. I enjoyed it. But yeah, that is the legend of Maggie's Bridge. That is what Kelly Lidgy had to say about the bridge. She also has other books, as she mentioned. I will link those. I'll link her website, actually, on Facebook for you all to check it out if you'd like. And I think what we're going to do is I will do a giveaway. I will purchase a book from Kelly. I'll have her sign it. And I will do a giveaway this month, the month of October. Not quite sure of the rules yet, but I will post it when I think of it. So yeah, be on the lookout for that as well. We are going to be doing episodes every 2 weeks. I'm going to try that for a little while, see how that works. Next episode, we have Risha Lewis, the story of Risha Lewis coming up with the guy from Unsolved and Black Missing People, Klein Williams. I am extremely excited for you all to hear that. It's you got to hear it. So come back, check us out on the 17th of October. That'll be out. I'll have a candy themed kind of episode on Halloween. That's cool. We'll have an episode on Halloween this year. So yeah, we're excited to close out 2024. It's been a great year. It's going to be a great spooky season. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. I hope everyone stays safe. And as always, guys, if you thought nothing happened here, you thought wrong.